Episode number 21. Shalom, this is Rabbi Eliyahu Mitrov with this week's Talmud podcast. This week we're going to be learning Baba Metzia on Daf 34b. We're doing the third Tosafoes. The Gemara says like this: Shoel min shutafim. What if somebody borrowed from shutafim? V'shilin lechad mehem. But when he paid back, he only paid back one of them. What's the din? Does he get the kefil or doesn't he get the kefil? Also, we have another case. Shutfim sheshoel v'shilin lechad mehem. What about if two partners borrowed a cow and one of them paid? What would be the din? Will he get the kefil? And now we have our case. Our case is shoel min ha'isha. A man borrows from a woman, v'shilem labala, but when he pays back her husband. Do we say he gets the kefil or not? The Tosafoes and the Rashi could explain the case. The Gemara continues, Isha sheshoel v'shilem bala. What about a case where a woman borrows and her husband pays back? Will he get the kefil? On all these questions, the Gemara answers teiko. We don't know the answer until Eliyahu Hanavi comes in the future. So Rashi explains on the case of shoel min ha'isha, borrowing from a woman. He borrowed a cow. Shanikse melug, which type of cow? How did it belong to the woman? It was the woman's before she got married, and then she got married. This is called nikse melug. These are the possessions that the husband gains the benefits of these possessions. What does Rashi say? Sha'keren shala v'aperos labal. The actual cow, the principal belongs to the woman, and the fruits of the cow belong to the husband. Shilem hapara labal. The shomer, instead of paying back the woman who he's supposed to pay back, because that's who he borrowed from, he paid back her husband instead. The question will be, does he get the kefil or not? What's the din? Liknos a kefil. Does he get the kefil? Miyamrin kaven the keren the lav the bahu. Since we say that the keren does not belong to the husband, the principal, the actual cow belongs to the wife and not to the husband. Lav tashlumi ma'aya. It's not a good payment. Ninhu v'lo karnik afela, and therefore he will not acquire the kefil. Or Dilma, Kevin Dapitropisu, since he is actually in charge of the cow, because he gets the paris of the cow, he's allowed to lend out the cow, he's allowed to use the cow. He's like an apitropis, he's a guardian for the cow. V'ocha paros, and he eats the fruits. Baalim hayu, he's considered like the Baal. Ma'alya. With tashlumim haim, and therefore the payment is a good payment. Now I want to explain that the acquisition that we're using here, on the side that it does work, he pays back the husband and he does not pay back the wife. But the acquisition that we're using is an acquisition that was created limafreya, retroactively. Since kefil, this fine, is not a thing that's in the world, the only way you can acquire it is through a retroactive kinyan. And that's what we said. We said that the woman has in mind that if you pay me back in the future, you will acquire this cow either ma'akshav, which means from the time that I'm handing it over right now, or from just a moment before the cow was stolen. But simply speaking, either way, it's the acquisition that the woman made at the time of the handing over. Now, I want to explain on the side that this works, that we say that it is a good payment, the acquisition is an acquisition limafreya, retroactively. Since kefil, this fine, is not a thing in the world at the time of handing over the cow because it wasn't stolen yet and we didn't find the thief, so there is no kefil, there is no fine. So how can a person acquire a thing that's not in the world? So the Gemara gave two possibilities. Or it happened at the time of the handing over the cow, the person said, listen, if this thing gets stolen and you pay me in the future, you will acquire the cow from now, and therefore the cow will be yours. And when a thief is obligated to pay the kefil, well, he's going to have to pay it to the owner, and that's going to be the shomer. So either it happens at the time of the handing over, or it happens at the time just before the theft. The Gemara said there were nafkaminas. I don't want to get into that now. But we have to know that the acquisition that we're talking about is the acquisition limafreya, the retroactive acquisition. And to summarize Rashi in this case, either we say that a man borrowed from a woman and he gave back to the husband, so we say it's a good payment. Why do we say it's a good payment? Because we'll say that he's an apotropos. He is like a guardian for her stuff, and he eats the fruits. And even though it's true he doesn't own the principal, but he is a baal in a certain sense. Rashi says there's a certain level of bailus. And therefore, when you paid back, the payment is a good payment. The other side will be, no, he's not an apotropos, and he doesn't have the Karen. So why are you paying him back? Why would you think that you can acquire the kefil? Because don't forget, we're assuming that the woman has to do the acquisition. The woman is the one who made the original deal with the shomer. So she'll say, this is not a good payment. You paid the wrong person. You paid my husband, and that's not good enough for me. And that will be the side that it doesn't work. Comes along the Tosafoes and he has a difficulty on Rashi. He says, Kasha. To my kiboye, what's the question? Ki shoa paro mina isha, because when you borrow a cow from a woman, ki ilu shoa paros mina baal. It's like you also borrowed the usage of that cow from the man. Because Yeshilim a par labao, and therefore when you pay back to the husband, kilu shilim a karen leisha. It's just like you paid back the principal to the woman. He doesn't understand. According to you, Rashi, why should there even be a question? It's obvious that it works. Since this cow is niksei melug and it's broken up into two parts, there's the principal and the fruits. So therefore, when you borrowed it, you borrowed both. And then when you pay it back, it doesn't matter who you actually pay it back to. You're giving back the full amount to the husband who was also a part owner in the cow. So what's the problem? So Tosafoes wants to answer. V'yesh liyeshev, sheshilin l'bal chelko, kamo shahaisa shavi l'parosea v'lo shilin b'keren. No, at this point in time, he did not pay back the full amount. He just paid back the value of the fruits of this cow that he used. In other words, let's say he borrowed the cow for 10 days. What's that worth? That's what he paid back to the Baal, because that money would really have to go back to Baal. Now, I'm assuming in the end he's paying the full amount, but that's not the point. The point here is this payment at this point in time a payment or not? Because we have to know the scenario. It goes like this. The woman lends out the cow. Then the cow gets stolen. Before the thief is found, this shomer says, listen, I'll pay back. And who does he pay back? He pays back the husband. And he doesn't pay back the full amount, but he did pay back something. So then what happens? Then the thief gets caught. And all of a sudden there's kefil. Now who does the kefil go to? We're not saying the guy's trying to rip off. He's not trying to pay just that amount. Of course he's going to pay back the full amount of the cow. But we want to know if this payment is considered a good payment now, in order to be considered viable to receive the kefil. So Tosafoes had a difficulty on Rashi, and he made it a kimpta. He changed the case to be that he pays back only the part that's shaykh for the husband, and therefore it could be a case of nix melug, and it works out fine. And that will be the case that the Gemara has the question on. The problem now is that there's an unstated difficulty. And that difficulty is, hey, wait a second, didn't we ask this question already? We asked, what if somebody borrows from two partners and he pays only one of them? Isn't that the same as this case? So Tosafoes wants to answer, no. It's worse. Why? Dahasam shilim karen. Well, there at least he paid back the karen. In other words, even on the side that it would work by two shutafim, if he paid back one of them, does he get the kefil or not? We will still have the question here because he's not paying back the karen in principle. He's just paying back the paros. So it's another level of difficulty. But in the end, Tosafoes says that this answer is difficult. Simply speaking, it's difficult because the Gemara says shilem. Where do you see he paid part? It says that he paid all. Not only that, but Rashi actually says he paid back the cow. So where do you come along to say he paid back part? So since it's difficult, Tosafoes has to give a different answer. Yesh the farasho min isha. He'll explain what does it mean that he borrowed from the woman. K'shahais penuya, when she was a single woman. Shayu shalah hakaren v'haparos. She had both. When she owned this cow, she owned the principal and she owned the paros. What happens? Afterwards, she got married. So therefore, Tosafoes says, V'hasta shilim a paros labal, and therefore you're going to wind up paying the paros to the Baal. Afilu natan hakol leisha, physically, even if you give all the money to the woman, Kevin Denise says, yesh lo paros, kedin nixi malug. She still has to give over the paros to nixi malug. For example, if she would buy another cow now, that cow would now belong to her, and the paros would belong to the husband. So maybe in such a case, she doesn't want to give away the kefil. When she was single and the entire cow was hers, and when she got back was an entire cow, and she also had the paros, so maybe she was willing to give away the kefil. But now, no way. She's saying, listen, I'm getting a cow, but I'm not getting the paros, I'm not getting the fruits of the cow, so I don't want to give away the kefil. That will be the question. Does she or doesn't she? So Tosafoes continues and says, V'kein isha sheshoel. Also the case in the Gemara where a woman borrows and then she gets married and pays back. Same thing. Kashihi panuya. When did she borrow? She borrowed when she was single. Then she got married. V'shilma, and she paid back. Dahasta shilim habal dahavi aparo shalo. So it's also that the husband's paying back. In such a case, the Gemara has a question. For example, the Baal lent this cow to the woman. He says, if you pay me back, I will give you the kefil. Then she got married. So she's not paying back all the money. He's paying back and she's paying back. She's paying back the cow and he's paying back the paros because now the cow was borrowed for both of them. In such a case, maybe the original owner wanted to give her the kefil, but not her and her husband. So we can also learn that okimta over there in that case. Now Tosafoes brings a third answer. He wants to say, the Rivan makes a different akimta. He says the case is where a guy borrowed from a woman, then the woman died. V'shilem lebal mahu. Then he pays back the husband. And Tosafoes continues and says, wait a second, afilim tim silom or the shilim lebanim. There's an unstated kasha. Wait a second. Isn't this the same case as paying back the sons? If you borrowed from the woman and the woman died, that's the same thing as borrowing from somebody. And then that person dies. And then the children inherit the cow. We had that question ready. Why do we have this question? In this case, the same thing. The woman dies and the husband inherits the cow. He's paying back the husband. He says, no, it's not exactly the same. You know why? Because even in such a case where you'll say that the children will pay for the nechusa of their father, for the nachas ruach that their father got from this guy. In other words, if the father agreed to give this guy the kefil, the children will also agree. Obviously, this father had a good relationship with this guy, but it's not the same case between husband and wife. Just because the wife was willing to give this guy the kefil and there was a good relationship, the husband doesn't care that there was a good relationship between him and his wife. Maybe the husband doesn't like this guy, so he's not willing to give over the kefil. So the question will be an extension. In other words, it will be a further question. Even if you'll say that it works by children and a father, it may not work by a husband and a wife. And this explanation is going toward the assumption that the kinyan happened just before the theft. In other words, the father or the wife died before the animal was stolen. In that case, there'll be a question as to whether the husband or the children agree to give this guy the kefil. But according to the other shita, which is ma'akshat, that the kinyan happened originally, the kinyan happened by the person handing over the animal at the original time. According to that shita, we will have to say that the father or the wife died after the theft. And the question will be whether the husband or the children were included in the original kinyan. In other words, even if we say that the father has in mind, listen, I'm giving you this cow. I'm an old man. But if you pay back my children, I will give you the kefil. In other words, the children were included. Why were the children included? Because the father worries about his children. He wants to make sure that they get the full amount for this animal if it gets stolen. So he includes in the original acquisition that you will receive the kefil even if you pay back my children, which is not true by a wife. We'll still have a question by a wife, because a wife doesn't worry about her husband because she knows her husband knows how to provide for himself. So she didn't have that in mind. So according to either shita, we will still have the question of when a woman passes away, even if we answer the question of when a father passes away, because this question is a deeper question and we wouldn't have an answer even if we had the answer about the father and the sons. So Tosafoes continues and says we can make the same akimta Also in the case, V'kein isha sheshalem ha'meitza v'shilim l'bal. We'll say that the case where the woman borrowed is the case where she died and paid back the Baal. And even if we say that the original owner would give over the kefil to this guy's children because the shomer passed away, that's because he has rachmanis on them. But who says that if a woman borrows and then she dies, the original owner is going to have rachmanis on the husband? Maybe he doesn't care about the husband. So we'll still have a question, even if we say in the case where the shomer dies that you give the kefil, maybe here no. And that's the end of the Tosafoes. So now the Tosafoes of Rashi also explains Rashi. He says like this: Mi amrin and kaven the karen the lav the bahu lav tashlumim he. Maybe we'll say, since the karen does not belong to the Baal, the principal is not the Baal, it's not a good payment. The lov beit teluyak nuya kefil. He adds something. He says, because it's not dependent upon him, the giving over the kefil. He doesn't own the karen. It's not his cow. He only has the fruits. Or dilma v'keven da'apitropis. Or no, you'll say he's a shomer. He's a guardian. V'hua nechasim v'ochel paros. And he eats the fruits. Baili miyu. He's considered a Baal. Alehu. But Tashlum and it is a good payment. It's similar, he just added a point, which is that the kefil is not dependent on him. It's an important point, though. He continues, he says, we have to say this simple case of Niksei Melug, which Rashi brought down, is a case where the woman doesn't know that her husband got paid. And therefore we have a question. In other words, what happened? Somebody paid the husband, a woman has no idea. And therefore we have a question as to whether he acquires the kefil or not, because the woman doesn't know. Because if she did know, what would be the question? It's obvious. It's like he paid back a chov, obligation to the husband. To his hand, it's like part of the cheshbon that the man and the woman have between each other. Obviously, they have a cheshbon. Here you have a case where the cow, the principal belongs to the woman, and the paros belong to the man. So of course they're keeping track of who gets what. V'yado ki yada, and his hand is like her hand. So therefore, it must be a case where the woman doesn't know. So according to the Tosafoes of Rosh, if the woman doesn't know, so Rashi is okay. But if the woman does know, so then we have a question, just like Tosafoes had. Our Tosafoes didn't bring out this point, but the Tosafoes of Rosh is bringing out the point. And it could be that's what Tosafoes is saying, is we don't understand in the case where she knows, it's obvious that paying back him is like paying back her. The question will be, according to Tosafoes of Rosh, is a case where she doesn't know, and that's where we have a question. So that would be another way to explain Rashi. So now the Tosafoes of Rosh continues, and he brings out a very important point. The machlokas rishonim, who does the kefil belong to? Whose kefil is it? He says, "V'hashti ima kefil leisha nika kaparashti." It's good, like I said, if the kefil belongs to the woman. In other words, the karen of normally we have a cow belongs to one person, so that person has the print. So that person has the principal, and he has the paros, and the kefil belongs to him. In other words, when you pay back the kefil, it goes to him. But in this case, it's niksei melug. It's a cow that originally belonged to the woman. Then the woman got married, and now who gets the kefil? When the thief pays the kefil, does it go to the man or does it go to the woman? So that will depend who can sell the kefil, who can give away the kefil. Only the owner of the kefil can give away the kefil, or you at least have to have the agreement. So the Tosafoes of Rosh says everything's fine as long as we said that the kefil belongs to the woman. About ima kefil labal, but if the kefil belongs to the husband, kashar paros, and that's a good possibility because kefil appears to be like paros. It's an extra payment that comes from this cow. It's something that the cow produced, happened to be produced through stealing, but it still produced it, so maybe it ought to go to the Baal. But if it does go to the Baal, like kashar paros, lama lo yakshuv tashlumim. Lahaknos a kefil shehu shalo. It's obvious that the kefil gets sold when you give the money to the husband. Why? Because he's the Baal kefil. So what happened? You have a case where you gave back all the money to the husband, and the husband says, fine, you get the kefil. Obviously, he's going to give the money to his wife. And he owns the kefil, so he can give the kefil away. So it doesn't make any sense. Why do we have any boy in the Gemara? There is no question. If it belongs to the Baal, obviously it works. And and therefore it must belong to the woman. The only problem is we have a difficulty now. Because if you look in Kesubos on Daf Ayin Tet Amud Beis, it appears to be that really the kefil does belong to the Baal. What does it say? Amri, the kefil Vlad Nechasim Melug Habi Leisha. The kefil of the Vlad, here we're talking about a little bit of a different case. Here you had a case of an animal from Nixei Melug, which means that the woman owns the principal and the husband owns the peros. So what happened? The animal had a baby. Who does that baby belong to? The baby belongs to the husband. What happens now? The baby gets stolen. Who does the kefil belong to? That's the question of the Gemara over there. The kefil de Vlad Nixei Melug v'habi leisha. We say that kefil goes to the woman. Mishum dahavi period the period. Because it's a fruit of a fruit. For period the period alone tikne leil Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan did not make a gezerah on the fruits of the fruits. Since it's already one step removed, what do we say? In the case of Nixei Melug, the keren belongs to the woman, and the fruits belong to the husband. But the fruits of the fruits do not belong to the husband. So he continues and says, look, mashma, if you make an inference, ha'kevu de behema dechad piria hu dahavi abal. It must be that the kefil, the original kefil of the original animal, it will go to the husband. Because what did the Gemara said? It wants to know about the kefil of the baby. And it answers, no, period, the period, they did not go there. Mashma, period, they did go there. One period, yes. The kefil on the original animal will go to the Baal, according to this inference. So therefore, it appears we have a proof that really the kefil belongs to the Baal. If the kefil belongs to the Baal, the Tosafoes says the Gemara makes no sense because we wouldn't have any question. Why does the Gemara have a question if you pay back the Baal, if you get the kefil or not? He's the Baal Davar. What's the problem? You paid back the right guy because the kefil belongs to him. And therefore, the Gemara will have no question. So what do we do with it? It appears that it's a good inference in the Gemara. He comes along and wants to explain, no, that's not the way you read the Gemara. You read the Gemara like a kol shekain. You read the Gemara that it's even period to period, the fruit of the fruit, the husband doesn't get. Why is it even? Because since this new animal, which came out of the Nixei Melug, the body of that animal belongs to the husband, so even in such a case, he doesn't get the kefil. If you read the Gemara like that, the inference falls off. In other words, the Gemara reads, even the fruit of the fruit the husband doesn't get. Even though he owns the animal, he still doesn't get the kefil. And kol shekain, or the more so, the kefil of the original animal, he doesn't get where he doesn't own the original animal. The woman owns the keren, the principle of the original animal, the body of the original animal. He doesn't own that. So surely he won't get the kefil in such a case. And therefore, the Gemara is no longer a proof. There's a big fight in the Rishonim how to learn this Gemara. And they're all going to fight whether the inference is a good inference or not. Simple Peshat in the Gemara, it appears the inference is good. That's the way the Rif learns, that it's a good inference. Period to period, no, but period, yes. But there is another way to read it, obviously, the Tosafoes and the other Rishonim, that we can learn in a different way. And the Gemara is speaking all the more so. But we know the diuk is not mukhrak. It's not 100%. You can say the reason why the Gemara said it was telling you a chidush, with a novel idea that even the fruit of the fruit, this guy doesn't get, even though he owns the animal. And all the more so if he doesn't own the animal. And that would also be a simple Peshat in the Gemara. It means the inference doesn't stand, and the woman still owns the kefil, not the Baal. And therefore we can learn Peshat the way the Tosafoes learn Peshat in the Gemara. Now comes along the Ritva, and he also has this question. He says, wait a second. Yesh l'makshin, I have a problem with Rashi. Daha mesektes kesubos, mashma de kefa de behema malug de Baal. It also learns the diuk. It belongs to the Baal. If it stole a case of a behema malug, the child, somebody stole the child, mishalema kefa liisha. Do you pay to the woman? Chad period tikno. Mishalema kefa liisha. You pay the kefil to the woman. What's going on? Period tikne l'Rabbanan, period lo tikne l'Rabbanan. So the Gemara answered, the fruit they made a gezerah, but the fruit of the fruit they did not make a gezerah. Aval kafel the behema atzmo, the lo having appeared to the baho. Simple way to learn the diuk. It's strong. It's very strong. He says a beautiful thing. He says just the opposite. He says, if you'll say that it belongs to the husband, Peshita, since you only borrowed from the woman, Lo kone kefel. The Baal, there's no way to kone the kefel of the Baal. Afagav the shilin the Baal Karen. Even if you pay the Baal the Karen, Kevin the Karen eno shalo. Because the principle is not his. He says just the opposite. If you say that the kefil belongs to the husband, there's no way to get the kefil. Why? Because you borrowed from the Isha. And since you borrowed from the woman, and now what are you doing? You're paying the Karen back to the Baal. You're giving him all the money. It's true the kefil belongs to him, but the Karen belongs to the woman. So the woman has to give the okay. If the woman doesn't give the okay, there's no way for him to give over his kefil. It's like she didn't receive anything. So he gives a couple answers and he says, Zainu Kushi, it's not a problem. Obviously, the husband gave permission for the wife to lend out the cow. What's the proof? He brings a proof. He proves it by proving the opposite false. He says, if it wasn't true that he gave permission, the deal's not a deal at all. It's like the guy stole the animal. There's no way to kone the kefel if it's considered shoah shalom adas. In other words, the Karen belongs to the woman. The paros belong to the man. The woman wants to lend out the animal to somebody. But that's the paros. The borrowing of the animal, the use of the animal is the paros. What she do? She stole from the husband and gave it to another guy. So surely there's not going to be a kinyan of kefil in such a case. So since he gave permission, even though it's true that he doesn't have any Karen and the kefil is his, but they're really together, so when he pays back him, he pays back her. And it's going to wind up that the person will be able to get the kefil. He gave the okay, in other words. That's the first answer. So then he has a little difficulty on that. He says, wait a second, but how does it fit Peshat in the Gemara? What do you mean they're partners? It says borrowed from the woman and paid back the man. What's Peshat? He says, no, that's to teach us it was Niksei Malug. In other words, that's Peshat in the Gemara, Niksei Malug, but it doesn't mean the husband didn't know about it. Of course the husband knew about it. That would be the question in the Gemara. Now the Ritva comes along and gives a second answer. He says, Inami, alternatively, he said to her that you can lend it out on your das. It's not really permission, and they're not really sharing. They're not lending it out together. You could do whatever you want with that animal. I'm not using it this week. Do whatever you want. But at least it was his ratzon. It was his will that she lent it out. So it could be the person will get the kefil. When he pays him, the Karen. Why? Because what does he care? Listen, I'll give away my kefil, because in the end, together they're going to get back again another cow. Let's say they take the money, they buy another cow, you wind up with another cow, the Karen belongs to the woman, it's Niksei Malug, the paros belong to him, and he's happy with it, give away the kefil. So even though the kefil belongs to him, and even though it's not like he lent at the animal, but he gave general permission for this woman to lend out the animal. And therefore, in a certain sense, we have the okay to give away the kefil. I'm going to bring the Rashba in a minute, who's going to explain this idea a little bit further. But in the meantime, the Ritva gives a third answer, which we saw already. No, it does not true. The kefil does not belong to the husband. It belongs to the woman. And he explains the same story here. You can't make the diuk. I'll read his words here. What does it mean that the Rabbanin were only goes there on one period? No. The rivusa, it's an important word. It comes as a chiddush, is adding something, Nikita. The bekefa havlad, the afa pisha guf shalo. Even though the body of the animal is his, eno zoka bekefa shalo. Kefa in the period the asim alma. Since kefa is something that comes totally from the outside, it shouldn't belong to him. And all the more so where the body of the animal belongs to the woman, you do not receive the kefil. So therefore the inference falls off, and he also reads the Gemara that way. I just want to go back to his second answer. The Rashba says like this. He has a moment of shach. He says, I don't understand either way. It's not clear in my eyes. Shoah as a isha below reshus bala, halainu yachol l'shil. If it's without the rishus of the Baal, like we said, how can he possibly lend out the animal? On the other hand, if it was with the rishus of the husband, therefore it's like you paid the husband back. Why would only consider it a good payment? You paid, he knows about it, and you paid him back. It's like you borrowed from both of them. Since you paid back the Baal, and the Baal knows, and he gave permission, and they're together, it's like you paid back. There should be no question. According to this, the Rashba does not agree with the first answer of the Ritva. He says, if it's shutafim together, no way. It's obvious that the payment's going to be a good payment. But he does agree with the second answer of the Ritva, and he explains it further. He says, Yesh lomer, ledas Rashi zal, dilma shenatan habar reshus lahashil ledata. The Amar le hashil ledатech. We have to know what that means. It means he's not a partner, he's not lending, he's not responsible. He's saying, listen, you can do whatever you want with this animal. And he brings a source which we didn't see in the ritual, which explains his concept. It says in the Gemara, Kishein she'omer lekaman. Like it says in Metzia 36a, it says, I'll bring down exactly what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, a hiram must swear that it died naturally. In other words, if a man rented an animal and then he lent the animal out to somebody else, and then the animal died naturally, so what's the din? The din is that he can swear that it died naturally, and the guy who borrowed the animal, he has to pay back the guy who rented the animal, and the original owner winds up with nothing because he took a shavua. The one that he rented it to took a shavua, so now he doesn't get his money. And the shoel, the guy who borrowed it, will have to pay the guy who rented it. So the Gemara says, well, just let the guy say, the original owner, what do you mean you lent it out to somebody else? I didn't agree that you should lend it out to somebody else. So the Gemara answers that he gave him the okay. So then it continues, what do you mean he gave him the okay? If he gave him the okay, let the third guy pay the owner. Let him pay. In other words, it was like he lent it out to this guy. So the Gemara answers, no, it was at his discretion. It's not like the original guy lended the cow to the third guy. He rented the cow to this guy, and that guy rented out the cow. How does he get away with such a thing? Because he did it at his discretion. He says, listen, I will rent you the cow. You could do whatever you want with the cow. You want to lend it out to somebody else, fine. So the same thing here. If we go back to the Ritva, we can explain the question in the Gemara, even in a case where the kefil belongs to the husband. The problem was, if the kefil belongs to the husband, how is it possible that you're paying back the keren to the woman and you borrow from the woman and he has no connection at all to the keren? How can it be that you wind up getting the kefil that belongs to him? Everything went back to the woman. And the answer will be no. He gave permission for the woman to lend it out. And even though the kefil belongs to him, but since he agreed, there's a side to say that the woman had in mind to give away his kefil at the time of handing over the animal. Now, don't forget, the kinyan we're talking about is the kinyan limafreya. So the woman is the one who did the kinyan. So since the woman received this permission, or this level of permission, where she takes full responsibility, but she still had in mind to give the kefil over because she knows the husband agrees to lend out the animal. That would be the question in the Gemara. Yes or no? Do we give away the kefil in such a case or not? So even though you paid the husband, and in a certain sense he gets absolutely nothing, but the agreement of the husband will be there, and the woman knows about that. And therefore the question will be, was there a kinyan or not? I just want to end off with the Rebbe Kiva Eger, who has a question on the second answer of Tosafoes. Tosafoes' second answer was, the case is where the shomer pays back part of the money to the man. And that's why we have a question in the Gemara. If not, Tosafoes says Peshita. According to you, Rashi, I don't understand. If you paid back him, you paid back her. They're together. What's the difference? So Tosafoes wanted to answer, no, he only paid back part of the money. So Rabbi Kiva Eger says, near the zel shitas arif. This has to be according to shitas arif, who holds over there in Kesubos The Ganav Behem Maluga Kefo Baal. Must be that the kefil belongs to the Baal in the case where you pay back half the money. This doesn't apply to the case where you pay back all the money. In the case where you pay back half the money, it must be the kefil belongs to the Baal. Why? Because in such a case, it's true, we'll have a question. Does he want to makne his paros for what he received? Avalishitis Tosafoes Sham, but Tosafoes over there in Kesubos, the kefil the Isha, that the kefil belongs to the Isha. Im kain lo shaykh limiboy bezeh. There's no question at all. The Isha lo kibela teshlumi klau. In this case, she didn't receive anything. This guy only paid back part of the money. She receives nothing. V'habal en yechol laknos a kefil she'ena shalo. And if the kefil belongs to the woman, how can we possibly think that that he can give away the kefil? The kefil's not his. Here we have a case where the woman received nothing. You just paid back the money that goes to the Baal. And not only that, but the kefil is hers. So how can it be that the kefil is going to go to this guy? There's no way. She received nothing, and it belongs to her. It's not going to work. So therefore, he wants to say that this answer in Tosafoes is only according to Shita Sarif, who hold that the kefil belongs to the Baal. But the other Shitas who hold that the kefil belongs to the woman, you'll never be able to answer this answer. And that's why Tosafoes obviously had to continue and give different answers. The first answer is only according to Shita Sarif. But now he has a problem. This is an essential problem here. A dayin kasha, a rif. Hakevet negufa para enu shalo, ve'eni yechol laknos rak para lekefela. Since that the goof, the keren of the animal is not his, and the only way that you can get kefo is through a kinyan retroactively. You have to acquire the animal. And the kefo doesn't belong to the husband. Okay, we touched up the teretz of Tosafoes. It's talking about a case where the Baal owns the paros. We gave some money to the Baal, and we have a question whether the paros go over to the shomer or not. But he says, where's the kinyan? The only way you can sell a davar shelo ba'olam is if you sell the cow. Now, the cow doesn't belong to this guy. How is it possible that he's going to give away the kefil? If the only way to give away the kefil is to give away the cow, he can't give away the cow because the cow doesn't belong to him. The davar shelo ba'olam, it's not a thing in the world. Now this is interesting. The aftahu koni para lekefela. What does it mean that wait a second, how the rabbis gave him kefil? That's also davar shelo ba'olam. It's also a davar shelo ba'olam. It's a thing that's not in the world. So how can the rabbis say that you get the kefil? Which kefil? The kefil's not here. How is it possible? There, hainu mit tekanas chachamim, the konei kain. The rabbi said it was okay. It's a schus, they want to explain. It's a different din, it's a schus. But you can't give away that schus. The only way to give away the kefil is to give away the animals. Even if the rabbis say that he gets the kefil, but he can't give it to anybody else. So therefore, even if you want to say that this answer is according to the Rif, and it's true that the Baal owns the kefil, but how does the Baal give away the animal? There's no way. So he wants to give a dochek answer, and he wants to say, Srik le dochek, you have to say, you're forced to say, the boy rak ba'otosa di'echol limchor eved lekanas. It's a different din legamre. There's a din that a man can sell his eved for the kanas. In other words, if a slave gets gored, gets killed, you have to pay a kanas, you have to pay a fine to the owner. So therefore, you see, you can sell that fine to somebody else, like you sell life insurance. You can say, listen, if my slave gets killed, you'll get the kanas. How much you pay me for that right now? You're allowed to sell that. So we have to say here it's the same din. What does it mean, according to this answer, that you'll wind up getting the kefil? It's only according to the shita. First, only according to the shita of the Rif. And not only that, it's only according to the shita that says you can give away the kefil in the same way that you can sell an eved for his kanas. You can also sell a shur for its kanas. In other words, if this thing gets stolen, you'll get the kanas. But that's only according to the sheet that you can sell an eved for a kanas. According to all the sheet that says you can't sell an eved for his kanas, so it won't work. So the first answer of Tosafoes is very limited. This is what Rabbi Kiva Eger wants to say. Okay, that's it for this week's Talmud podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Please look below this video for any links that can help you to understand this class. I linked to the PDFs of the sources that I brought down in this class. I hope you enjoyed it.